my goal is being achieved.
Okay, well, give me a couple seconds here, and we'll get things off and running here. Hold on, my
Appreciate
friend.
it. Thank you for the laughs, too.
We have got a fantastic guest with us today. He joins us live here on the telephone, and he is Nikita Koloff, one of my favorites from 80s professional wrestling, and I'm also very happy that he's a great Christian faith leader as well. I will have to say, before we get started with all this, before I start marking out to the wrestling stuff, I want to start marking out to your Christian faith leadership. I think I had this COVID-19 in February. And so
wow.
I spent a month on the couch, and I was, because we were originally going to do this interview sometime in February, but I got the flu, or what I thought was the flu, and I actually had, I think, the COVID-19, and I spent most of my time watching my tablet, and I happened to come across one of your interviews you did with Sting on, I think it was CBN maybe, and I loved that interview, and then, of course, I went down the YouTube rabbit hole, and I watched a bunch of your different church services and different things like that, a couple that you did with Lex Luger. It kind of got me through the whole thing, so I thank you for that, my friend.
Well, James, one, great to be with you. Thank you for the opportunity to chat with you for a little bit today. Secondly,
Yes.
Thank you very much. I mean, it's very encouraging to me to know that that helped you get through a challenging, difficult time. I appreciate that. I'm just enamored at the opportunities that up to this point, prior to the shutdown, that I've had to be able to share the good news of the gospel of Jesus and share my story and how he transformed my life, and we can talk about that or whatever anything else you want to
Oh,
chat about.
we're gonna talk about all sorts of things. I want to first of all hit the wrestling part of it, and then I definitely want to get into the Christian faith part of it. You started out in professional wrestling, NWA, all these different places. But before you started wrestling, what got you into this whole thing? What was the thing?
Yeah, it wasn't. It wasn't on my radar as a kid. You know, a lot of guys it was. I mean, a lot of guys grew up watching it, loving it, dreaming of being a pro wrestler one day. Up in Minneapolis, Moscow, Minnesota. I didn't necessarily watch it. Vern Gagne had the AWA up there, and I think we had. I don't remember. I think we had like 3 TV channels back in the day, so it's hard to miss it. But yet, I wasn't necessarily what you would call a fan of it, but I was aware of it, right? And for me, it was weightlifting, starting at the age of 12, and a dream of playing in the National Football League as a kid. That was my dream. That was my passion for quite a number of years, and really my first introduction to a live professional event came through the likes of a guy named Jesse the Body Ventura. Bunch of us muscleheads worked out in a little sweatbox gym of his in North Minneapolis, and he had invited us down to his show. He was doing a deadlift match, so that piqued my interest. I didn't really care about the wrestling. He was doing a deadlift competition against a guy named Paul Ellering.
Wow.
Yeah. So that was my first introduction. But that said, I still have my sights on the NFL. And in the meantime, in college, some of my buddies had gotten involved, Road Warrior Animal, Barry Darso, Rick Rude, and some others. And their careers were taken off. And I was continuing my pursuit of professional football.
So these guys are deadlifting. Do you happen to remember the poundages or what some of the different different feats of strength that you witnessed that day? Because I'm sure that this sounds like it was way before they made the modern deadlift platforms. So I'm sure they were just slamming weights all over that little gym.
Well, are you talking about Ventura and Ellering?
Yes.
No, dude, you don't understand. That was at the St. Paul Civic Center as part of the wrestling show.
Oh, wow. Okay, so they were...
They had the weights in the ring. So, yeah, and since you asked, I'll tell you this part. We're standing down, I'm standing away. We're on the floor, but I'm a ways away from the ring. And I'm hearing the announcer, as they're loading and stacking the bar, each guy would do it, and he'd make it, and then he'd stack more weights, and then, eventually Ventura failed, and then it came down to Ellering, and if he made it, he won, right? That's right. Well, the announcers announcing the weights, and I'm like, and I'm not close enough where I can see the plates, but I know they're 45-pound plates.
Yeah.
And I'm like, and I go, hey James, that announcer doesn't know how to add, right?
Oh, okay.
I'm not good at math either, but I'm like, that dude don't know how to add. There's not that much weight on there, and then that was my aha moment.
Okay, so so basically everything was gimmicked.
I was like, aha, maybe this isn't all it's cracked up to be here.
With this, and you've been involved in pro wrestling, like you said, for a heck of a long time. What is the appeal to the bench press competition, the deadlift competition? Why do wrestling promoters or bookers think that this is the thing to do? Because sometimes it, like with you, you're super into it. But the vast majority of, as we call them, the marks sitting in the front row, they've never lifted a weight in their life. They must be terribly bored by all this. What is the reason they used to do the bench press competitions? And what was it mainly to further an angle? Or
that's it. I mean, it becomes part of the storyline, part of the angle they're perhaps either building or leading up to or into, and so not so much the competition of it. Obviously, again, the weights were not the actual weights, but it was the outcome that they were shooting for, which they got, which was Ellering looks, he's struggling, looks like he's going to get it and beat Ventura, and Jesse races across the ring, throws chalk in his eyes, and Ellering falls under the bar, and they bring stretchers in, they going to take, he breaks away and kicks him off the stretcher onto the concrete floor. So it's just something that leads into the end result of what they're trying to accomplish.
We have got Nikita Koloff with us today. He is fantastic. He is just amazing professional wrestler, Christian faith leader. Get more information, NikitaKoloff.com. You can see his career. His ministry is over there as well, Koloff for Christ Ministries. And he's got all sorts of things going on over there at NikitaKoloff.com. Also his Instagram, Facebook as well. Nikita's doing some really cool things on Instagram right now for people that are basically locked down due to the COVID-19. Continuing on with professional wrestling, and you have a great background. You've done a ton of different things in the NWA. How come you never got in WWE? How come that never happened? Was it just a money thing, or did you just have zero interest? I've always wondered, because it would have been perfect to see Nikita Koloff versus The Undertaker at a WrestleMania. The Nightmare against the Russian Nightmare.
Yeah, there you go. Nikita against Hulk Hogan, of course.
Yes.
The magazines built that one up for a while. And,
yes.
And there would have been others, I'm sure, that I could have been competitive against, and I certainly potentially could have leveraged that even for more money from Jim Crockett, but
yes,
never entertained the idea, James. Jim Crockett Jr. gave me my break in professional wrestling. For those who don't know the story, we won't go into it today. I mean, you gave my website; they can read more about it there. But or they can pick up, the book. My last book was Nikita, A Tale of the Ring of Redemption. That book covers my story back all the way back as far as I can remember in life to present day.
Yeah.
But
the book's fantastic, by the way. When I announced we were going to have you on the program, I had all sorts of people come out of the woodwork that said, "Hey, have you read his book?" So.
Well, that's awesome. Well, hey, just for the listeners out there, just know that during this shutdown, I am in fact, I've already wrote 3 brand new chapters for it. I'm working on a 4th chapter, and hopefully by the end of the year at the latest, there will be a new edition of A Tale of the Ring of Redemption.
Fantastic.
But don't let that stop you from getting the current edition. But that said, I just never entertained the idea. In fact, Barry Darsow, when he came, we brought him in as Crusher Khrushchev. And when he went up to do the demolition gimmick, he originally asked me to go with him, and I'm like, Barry, I just worked too hard on the
Yes.
Russian Nightmare, and getting that character over, and so I had no interest in abandoning that character, and just continuing on with it, and then also because the question's always asked, well, did Vince or did any of that, did they ever approach you? And quite truthfully, no, they never did. I ran into Vince in a gym in Las Vegas one time when we both had shows in town the same night, and had a cordial conversation with him, brief. And then the next time I saw him was at Road Warrior Hawk's funeral, and had another brief conversation with him. But
yeah.
I was just loyal. I'll summarize it by saying this. I was loyal to the NWA, still am to this day. I was loyal to Jim Crockett for giving me the opportunity that he gave me, which is really in a sense unparalleled prior to anybody else, or perhaps even ever anyone since then, that he gave me the opportunity he gave me. Pretty amazing opportunity.
We've got Nikita Koloff with us today. He joins us live here on the telephone. And you worked a lot of programs and had a lot of feuds with Lex Luger back in the NWA. I've heard a lot of stories over the years about how difficult Lex was back then as compared to now. What do you make of that? Because he is a totally different guy nowadays. You see him on videos or interviews, he's laughing, having a good time. You see him back in the day, he's very serious, and he's got his nose in the air.
Well, yes. I mean, I jokingly say I'm one of the few guys who actually liked him back in those days.
That's awesome.
Like for reals. Like, I mean, we used to travel together some when we were on the same side of the track, not when we were obviously fighting against each other, but for a while there we were on the same side of the track. So we used to travel together, and I would say in those days, really, when he did the character, the narcissist up in New York, that wasn't too far from the truth. It wasn't hard for him to have to manufacture that. That was pretty accurate. I mean, it was Lex's world. It was all about Lex, and everything he ever did, whether pro football or wrestling or anything else, weightlifting, bodybuilding, came to him very natural, and so therefore it gave him a bit of an edge, we'll call it. The change or the difference between then and now, anyone who knew him then and anyone who spends any time around him now, to your point, would have to walk away and say, he is not the same guy I knew back then. And I'm going to give you the condensed reason for that. April 23rd, 2006, he got on his knees in a hotel room with a chaplain from the jail that had befriended him, who led him in a prayer of salvation, giving his life to Jesus. And as Lex says, he was pressure washed from the inside out, from the bottom of his feet up, and that his life now is evidence of a genuinely changed life. He's not perfect by any stretch of the imagination. None of us are. But he is a changed man, and it had to do with April 23rd, 2006, when he gave his life to Jesus.
Well, I remember hearing that the longer version of that in one of your services that you and him did at a local church, and he said that this chaplain was like, never let him, alone for a minute. He'd show up at the gym. Hey, let's work out. he was like, let's go out to dinner.
No, it's a great story. Again, I'll give you a condensed version of it, but it's a great story because the chaplain just felt prompted to, while Lex was in jail like 4 months, right? And so the chaplain would come by every day, and Lex would just blow him off. Stiff arm him, give him the Heisman.
Yeah.
I don't want to talk to this preacher guy. And then one day, he was so bored, he goes, all right, I'm going to see what this guy has to say. Well, that said,
it's a great story.
Out there, if you're in ministry, this is called relational witnessing. By that meaning, Pastor Steve befriended him for several months through jail. He used to bring him peanut butter and different things. Never one time brought up Jesus. Never one time brought up the Bible. He just befriended him.
Yes.
And then he had asked Lex, he goes, hey, would you trade me when I get out? Lex was like, yeah, sure, whatever. He gets out of jail. Well, there's like 1,000 gyms in Atlanta. Steve goes to like every one until he finds him.
That's amazing.
And he finds him, James, and Lex is like, yeah, I'll work you out. And he said, I worked him out so hard that day, I thought, because Lex was like, I'm not a personal trainer. He goes, I worked him out so hard that day, I didn't think I'd ever see him again. And he had to be so stiff the next day, but he showed up. He's like, oh, my gosh, he showed up. And the irony is, the day he was walking out of the gym when Steve found him, he was walking out with his drug dealer.
Oh, my God.
And it wasn't until 7 months later that Steve would lead him in that hotel to Jesus.
Holy smokes. That you are correct on that whole thing where he just, wow, that is an amazing story. That is just that is amazing. Another amazing story that I cannot wait to hear you give me your take on. But you were inducted into the NWA Hall of Fame in 2008.
Yes, sir.
And you've been on all sorts of, you were recently on some of the NWA Power shows. Did you ever think that Billy Corrigan, the Smashing Pumpkins guy, would ever own the National Wrestling Alliance? That is so insane. And he's done a hell of a job with it so far.
I think he's done I feel a fantastic job. He's got a love and a passion for it, which is part of what it takes to make it successful. And kudos to him, hats off to him, Dave Lagana.
Yes,
you guys have done fantastic, and I hope they stick to their vision and keep it grassroots level, because it's something so very different than everything else that's out there. That I think if they are patient and just continue to build it, they're going to continue to get a bigger and bigger and bigger following, I believe, and I think they got some great talent there, Nicole Deese and some of the other guys, Tim Storm, and who's I met for the first time when I was down there taping some shows for him. And Tim is just an incredible guy, and Billy. I had not met Billy prior. Well, I met him at the Crockett Cup last year, but just briefly. But so anyway, yeah, I think it's phenomenal what they're doing. It brought back many memories for me, being at that TBS studio on 10th and Techwood. When I went down there, I was like, wow, this is awesome. It was great. It was great.
Now, you retired in '92 after you had a match with Vader at Halloween Havoc. How much of just an ass kicking was that with Vader? Because I've heard so many stories of he beat up guys, and it didn't do it on purpose. He was just a huge guy. He just worked stiff. What was it like wrestling Vader? Because it wasn't just you guys had one match at Halloween Havoc. I'm sure you did house shows and things like this.
We did. In fact, it was really. I want to say it was right after Havoc. It was a house show in Winston-Salem where I got injured.
Yeah.
But I would say it this way: you say he didn't hurt guys intentionally, and I'd like to think he didn't, or don't believe he did. But because he's such a big guy, he had a reputation for being, the word I would use, reckless.
Okay. There
reckless.
You go. Yeah.
And so for that, because of that reputation, like there were certain things that he did that I just said, Leon, dude, I go, not on the Russian Nightmare. You can do that on other guys, but because I valued the health of my body, and I just said, we'll do other things, but we're not doing, this, just certain things that I felt were dangerous to the health of my body. And lo and behold, that last night, we're fighting out on the floor, and he, I guess, took about a 10-yard run and clotheslined me in the back of the head. I didn't know he was coming, and so I wasn't prepared for it. And basically it pinched a nerve and cut off all movement to my left arm. Like I couldn't, literally, if you have been sleeping on it all night and woke up and had to physically lift it yourself. So I couldn't move it at all. I climbed back in the ring and told the referee, it's Tommy Young. He's like, what do you want me to do? I'm like, nothing. The male ego kicked in, right? So fighting with the one arm. Eventually, the feeling I guess, jarred it back during the match. But anyway, I reported that, and then the next day, on my way to go get that checked out, I woke up that morning, I didn't feel right in my lower abdomen. Lo and behold, I had a hernia from picking that 500-pound, ginormous guy up. So I ended up having a hernia surgery. Ended up having the hernia surgery. I rehabbed the neck, and it was at that point, over Thanksgiving and Christmas, because that was November 7th I got injured.
Yes.
It was at that point that, I had made a decision to fulfill the commitment I made to myself to walk away on top of the wrestling business without hanging around too long.
You don't want to be Terry Funk and retire and come back and retire and come back.
Well, I
Constantly.
I love Terry, but man, if you look at him, I don't know how he gets out of bed in the morning. I mean, he is so. And Uncle Ivan, my Uncle Ivan Koloff, but people ask me all that. I just want to hear the voice one time. I'm tired of hearing that fake American accent.
Well, I remember listening to Arn Anderson has a podcast now, and he mentioned one time that you guys were on a plane somewhere and you were doing the Russian Nightmare. And he's like, I turned around and looked at him and said, knock that off.
Well, he used to call me GQ Ball. I go, GQ Ball. We're all smart. That didn't change my mentality just because they were all smart. I've been protecting my character. Not going to apologize for it. Here we are 30 years later, whatever, and I still, to this day, even with the internet and everything else, and interviews, I'll still occasionally cross someone who goes, dude, where's the accent? Man, all these years I really thought you were from Russia.
There was one of those videos that I was watching, and I think it was one of the different ones. I think it was you and Sting when you guys did that interview on TBN. I think it was, and there's several people that went in the comments, and they were like, "What? He's not really from Russia?" And I'm like,
to my point, Jake.
They always say kayfabe's dead. Nope, not with you.
Apparently not. But it's fun, though. It's fun for me to, like, when I get out for the Legends autograph signings and different things, it's fun to hear their stories now. And, in fact, if you're listening today, hey, if you have, let me say, I want to say this one thing of it, because I posted this, on Twitter and Instagram. Hey, if you have a favorite memory of the Russian Nightmare, Nikita Koloff, submit it to NikitaSKoloff@gmail.com. That's an S as in Sam, NikitaSKoloff@gmail.com, because your story may get into the new chapter of my revision of my last book. So
that's awesome. That's fantastic. Nikita Koloff with us today. He joins us live here on the telephone. Get more information, NikitaKoloff.com. And Nikita, we are streaming this interview as well as on Periscope and Facebook, and a professional wrestler here in Kansas by the name of Flex Reed, who kind of basically follows in your footsteps with the weight training. He's been listening to the interview. He said, possibly the best set of traps ever in the business. The Russian Nightmare was put together.
Thank you. I appreciate it. There's certain, like, guys have, like, some guys it's easy, to grow their legs. Some guys their chest, some their arms. For me, it was traps, man.
Yes.
I used to, like, legit. Like, this is legit. I'm not making this up. This is not the stretch of wrestling stories. I used to be in the gym during my college days. Now, I had straps on my wrists and the whole deal, but I used to shrug in the power racks with 800-900 pounds for reps. I mean,
wow.
Wow. Yeah, like, I'm not making that up either. It was insane. My traps grew so easy that I loved it. So anyway.
I remember hearing a story. I don't know if it was in a shoot interview or a podcast or something, but somebody had said they had come into a gym one day and you were in there doing bicep curls with a barbell, and you had like 2 45s on each end. and it wasn't that big of a deal to you.
Yeah, no, that wouldn't have been uncommon at all.
That is amazing.
Yeah, that was one of the big 45-pound Olympic bars, and then 45-pound plates on each side of it. Yeah, that was not uncommon.
Now, Nikita, you retired and you had, and like you said, you had kept kayfabe with this voice and this accent, and you basically spent, the only person that ever heard you essentially speak English was Ivan. And then you were, one day you decided that, you'd accomplished all these things, but you felt empty. Talk to me a little bit about that.
Well, yeah. Well, just to clarify on the Cape, the accent and stuff.
Yeah.
I mean, eventually, I was in dressing rooms and the home in which I lived and the car in which I rode, with others. I eventually, and on airplanes. I didn't always start with the accent on airplanes, but if there was any marks, if there was any fans around, that's typically when I made sure I always maintained the persona, right?
Yes.
If there was a fan within earshot. So even security, police in the back, which is why I did it in the dressing room sometimes, because there'd be cops coming in and out. So anyway, so just to clarify on that so people understand, and then walk away from wrestling, and I'm kind of reflecting back on the success and looking forward to the future. And it was in that season of 1993 that I'm like, I drew this conclusion: I'm successful, but I'm unfulfilled.
Yes.
I'm successful, but I'm unfulfilled. And I owned a club at the time, a gym of my own, a weightlifting gym in Concord, North Carolina, and I'm like, I don't want to do that the rest of my life. I got involved in some other business ventures and invested in some things, and I had actually a pastor and his wife who were members of my gym. They were pastoring a Lutheran church, and they'd invite me, and I'd go a few times just to, in my mind, to pacify them and to keep them as members, right? Wrong motive, but nevertheless, that is the truthful reason I went, basically. And then through some business ventures, I'd met a couple, Dick and Charlotte Easton, and a good Christian couple, and they'd invited me a few times to their church, and just the way God does things, in His perfect timing, was just I called him up one day and said, I'll be there Sunday, and it was that he said, we'll meet you there, and we were there, and I had never been there before. And at the end of that service, there was a stirring. I just sensed something different walking in, but by the end of the service, there was just such a stirring in my heart, stirring inside of me. that when an invitation was given to come to the altar and give your life to Jesus, I just realized at that moment, although I knew the story, I'd heard the story about the man who was crucified on the cross and, you know, getting ready for Easter, right? So crucified on the cross with nails driven through his hands and feet and a spear through. So I understood the story. I knew the story, but that didn't change or transform my life, having the intellectual understanding of that story. But on that day, 17 October, 1993, that story made the transition from my head down to my heart, and life has never been the same since. And at the altar that day for me, I went from success to fulfillment. I could truthfully say I was at the altar that day. When I stood up, got off my knees, stood up to my feet, there was a sense of fulfillment that if I had honestly died that day, I would have died a fulfilled man. And
that's
life
fantastic.
has never been the same. I've never looked back, and it's been a whirlwind of a journey ever since then.
So, Nikita, tell me about your ministry. Why you decided to find a ministry and begin that, because you're a great public speaker. You do a heck of a job preaching in churches and community gatherings, and what you do with your men's conferences. Why create an entire ministry?
Great question, Jim. I honestly didn't create it or go looking for it or try to find it, and use some of the words you're saying, and that's important. It's great way you asked the question, because I think who that is. Here's the Paul Harvey, the rest of the story that I didn't tell you. That day, an elderly man named Buddy came up to me, introduced himself, said, "Nikita, I'm not a wrestling fan, not here to get an autograph. I got to tell you this story." I'm like, "Okay." He goes, "I just want you to know, 5 years ago, I was watching television, surfing through the channels. Wrestling was on. I stopped. I'm watching. I asked myself, I don't even like this. Why am I watching? You were on doing an interview, and God spoke to my heart and said these words, quote, pray for that man's salvation and have a call to ministry on his life." Unquote.
Wow.
And he said, "Nikita, I have faithfully prayed for you the last 5 years every day." He goes, "I had no idea you were here today. I wasn't planning on coming today. I've been sick for several months and haven't been here." And he looked sick that day. He goes, "I woke up this morning and I wasn't coming, and God was just like prodding me, go to church." I'm like, "Fine." He goes, I gave in. I was obedient. I came. "I didn't know you were here till you walked across the front." He goes, "No." So I looked and I go, "Oh my gosh, that's the guy I've been praying for 5 years." And he got teary-eyed, and he goes, it dawned on me just now that out of all the churches, all the services on the planet, God prompted me to come and witness Nikita Koloff bowing his knee to Jesus Christ. And I was blown away, because I'm like, wow, some guy didn't even know me, prayed for me every day for 5 years. And then what he said was, I have a call to ministry on his life. So I didn't fully know what that meant at the time, but all that to say, James, I didn't just jump right in right out of the gate that day. I was actually mentored and discipled for almost 5 years. I actually went and got my hands dirty. I went to help build a church in the island of Trinidad the next summer. I went down to the island of Curacao and helped to build a Bible school, and I went for 3 weeks to Angola, Africa, to help build the church.
Wow.
And so I just went and got my hands dirty. I just wanted to know what it meant to go serve people and love on other people. And so in that process, I met an evangelist from South Africa who took me under his wing, began to disciple, mentor me, and then really in 1998, the floodgates, the doors opened up wide open for me to go begin to preach and do men's conferences and all these things. Fast forward to today, James. Now I've preached or ministered in approximately plus or minus 1,200 different churches, 26 different denominations, and 30 different countries I've now traveled to.
That's an accomplishment, sir.
Well,
Good Lord, that is something.
Yeah, it's amazing, and everything I did prior to 17 October 1993, as thankful and grateful as I was for the football and the wrestling and all the accolades and the Hall of Fames and everything else, all pales in comparison to what I'm able to do now. Even you complimenting me on Instagram and Twitter and Facebook and those. My heart is just to see other people's lives changed, just
Yes.
as mine has been changed, and hopefully bring a ray of sunshine and hope into a dark world, and especially in this given time that we're living in.
That's fantastic. We've got Nikita Koloff with us today. Now, what do you make of the? I guess it's a trend, and not it. It's a bad word to say as far as calling it a trend, but it seems like there's so many professional wrestlers over the years that they do wrestling, then they retire, and then they're born again Christians, and some of them, like Sting and you and Luger, you guys are actually doing it to do it, and then there's others that I don't know. I don't think they're doing it because they really are born again Christians. I'm not going to name names. You know who these people are. But
I think it's a very fair question. In fact, somebody asked a similar question on Twitter the other day, right? And here's my response to that, right? I mean, the only one who knows the true sincerity of a man's heart is the creator of that man. In
Yes.
other words, God, right?
yes.
He's the only one who knows the true heart of a man or woman, right? And whether or not a decision that was made or they profess to have made is genuine. Live in a fallen world, whether it's wrestlers or because they were asking actually about the term they used was clergy, right?
Yes.
Not every clergyman seems to be basically genuine. Well, there's going to come a day called Judgment Day with capital J and capital D, when the God of the universe sorts all that sort of thing out.
Yes.
And so for those, James,
Yes.
whose motives, whether it's wrestlers or anyone else, whose motives are not pure, they will stand before the creator of the universe and give answers to that. They don't have to answer to me. I'm not their judge. I'm not, thankfully not God and or Jesus. So I don't sort all that out. I mean, I get it. I understand. And we live in a very skeptical world, and wrestlers by nature are skeptical as well.
Yes.
And so that's essentially how I would address that. And that's where you just need, a person needs what a sermon to sense perhaps. Because Scripture does say, Spirit bears witness with Spirit. In other words,
Yes.
if you know someone's, if you've got the Holy Spirit living in you, you're a genuine born again believer, blood washed, and you meet someone and it's just something just doesn't set right, then that's probably the Holy Spirit telling you this person's probably not all they're cracked up to be, or
Yeah.
not living up to the advertisement, if you will. So, yeah, so I do my best not to really honestly put judgment on whether they're in ministry, not in ministry, just in life in general. I try to do my best not to bring judgment on anybody, but to be discerning of where they're, just how genuine they may be.
Yes.
And one other little side note.
Yes.
We're all, when I say we, all those who are born again believers, like profess to be that. Look, when you first give your life to Jesus, you become, how I term it is, you become a babe in Christ. Well, last time I checked, a newborn baby needs a lot of help, right? I mean, somebody's got to change its diaper because they're going to mess up their diaper. Somebody's got to feed them, and a baby Christian's no different. They're going to need a lot of, they're coming out of a world of sin, and they're going to need a lot of comfort and coaching and so I say that to say we're going to be a different. View it this way: some are going to be babes, some are going to be infants, some are going to be adolescents, some are going to be adults, and hopefully the older we get, in our journey, the more mature we get, whether it's physically, spiritually, mentally, or otherwise.
That's fantastic. It is Nikita Koloff. He's with us today here on the telephone. And a couple more topics before I let you go. I appreciate you making time for us today. You had a reality show, or still have a reality show. Tell me about this. Because I just happened to bump into this along the way in the YouTube rabbit hole. All of a sudden, here comes this trailer, and I see all these, I see all this stuff. Then I see these comments where these pervs are making comments about your daughters and things, and I'm like, what in the world is this? First of all, if anybody knows anything about Nikita Koloff and you know the 80s and Uncle Ivan and all the belts and the Russian sickle, I wouldn't be making any perv comments about your daughters. And that's a shoot.
Again, James, we live in a fallen world, James. We live in a fallen world. So, that's just, they're doing me a favor. How are they doing me a favor? Now I know who I need to pray for.
See, there you go.
They're really doing me a favor. They don't even know it. Man, I need to pray for this guy. Oh, my gosh, But, so that said, though, there was a show. It centered around my youngest daughter, Colby Koloff. And it really kind of, it's called Preacher's Daughters. So she was on the show for 2 years. It really was about her, even though the whole family was on it. They didn't have me on it a whole lot because they couldn't wiggle me into any controversial things. I give them a biblical answer. They weren't real thrilled about that. They wanted me to stir the pot. But that said, centered around her, and there were several other girls over the couple seasons she was on, but she kind of became the darling of Lifetime Network where it first aired, and the production company. They loved her, and she was very genuine, very, very, very pure and very genuine. And so even trying to mar her. But that said, they wanted her back for a third year, actually, and she knew that she didn't like the direction it was headed. Hollywood was pushing the envelope further and further, and she said, I respectfully decline your invitation. So kudos to her that she, on her own terms, walked away from another season
phenomenal.
Of that show. Yeah, it really is. I'm not saying just because she's my daughter, but she is my daughter. But the cool thing is that launched her into a Christian music career, songwriting, and she had signed a contract in Nashville as a professional songwriter and a singer. You can find her on Instagram, on Pandora, Colby Koloff, Colby with a K, Colby Koloff, and she's got incredible songs out there. She does speaking she has a message. She has a message to this generation, with the bullying and everything that's going on. So she's a speaker, and she does phenomenal. And so if anyone out there interested in having her speak it to your students, to your school or your youth group, she does that. But and then the rest of the family. 4 girls, right? Colby, Kendra, Tawny, Taryn, and now 8 grandchildren, and I got a full quiver, and just such a blessed man. But that show was not something, again, we were looking for. Her picture was submitted out of about 1,200 families. They chose her as one of 3 original families. A little side note here, this is interesting. The person who came up with the concept, we were in L.A. shooting interviews or shooting commercials. I bumped into the guy who had the original concept of the show, and he had no clue up to really that point in time. He did not connect dots, but he had a Nikita Koloff poster on his wall as a kid.
Fantastic.
And little did he know, through a show called Preacher's Daughters that he wrote, had the concept of it, that we would meet. So, little side note. Anyway.
The universe is an odd place, sir.
That is it. God will work in mysterious ways.
Yes. Now, I've been seeing different things online, and I don't know if this is just people trying to get things going. But are you going to be doing anything in politics?
Well, no. Well. there's what I call 7 mountains of influence, right? There's there's government, there's business, education, religion, arts and entertainment, sports and family. I think that's the 7. Anyway, I've been involved in 6 out of those 7 areas of impact and influence, and politics was the one I stayed like far away from. Did my good citizenship and voted, when I could. But all that to say, a good friend of mine up in Western North Carolina was running for a U.S. congressman's seat, and he reached out to me and he said, "Look, you have a fan following up here. I think you'd be a great surrogate speaker if you would consider helping me on this in this endeavor." And so I spent an hour on the phone one night grilling him asking him all the right questions that I felt would, if I were to do that would satisfy me as far as, how do you feel on, the freedom of religion, the First Amendment? How do you feel on the right to bear arms? How do you, all those different critical topics that nobody wants to talk about or people are very passionate about, right? So anyway, and all that to say, I made a decision to help support him in that endeavor. He did not, for the record, because there was a field of 12 people. So he didn't finish in the top 3, but he did okay. But it was an interesting. I did it partly for the experience because I'd never really been involved or engaged in that. And I learned a few things. I'm like, wow, people get like really passionate about some of this stuff, So that was just more than anything, just an opportunity for me to gain some experience in that world that I had never been in before.
Fantastic.
Yeah, it was a great experience.
Now,
it really was, looking back.
We have another question from our viewers on Facebook. This comes from another professional wrestler here in the area, Mr. J.M. Steele. He says, ask Nikita about the abnormal amount of his high school classmates that became huge stars in pro wrestling.
Yeah, crazy stuff. For those who don't know, kind of again, they could. One day, maybe somebody will make a movie out of this because a lot of guys came out of West Texas State University, right?
Yes.
Tony Blanchard.
Yes.
Who all came out? Ted DiBiase, Tito Santana.
Oh yeah, they're
right.
A ton of them.
A bunch of guys came out of West Texas State University, but they all came from different cities, right?
Yeah.
And this is one town, Robbinsdale, Minnesota. Robbinsdale High School, and there was a period there. I'm going to name off 7 guys and then give you 2 others as a bonus. 7 guys, of which 5 of the 7 one year played on the same high school football team, Robbinsdale High School.
Jeez.
Here's the guys. Ready? Here we go. Mr. Perfect, Kurt Hennig, Ravishing Rick Rude, the Z-Man, Tom Zink, the Barbarian, Nord the Barbarian, or Nord the Berserker, Crusher Khrushchev, Barry Darsow, the Russian Nightmare, Nikita Koloff, and then the lesser known was a guy named Brady Boone, who wrestled here in the NWA, did some refereeing, etc. Those 7 guys all came out we were all in high school at the same time, 3 different graduating classes, but we were all in the same time. And then the 2 bonus guys, Vern Gagne and Mean Gene Okerlund were also graduates of Robbinsdale.
Holy smokes!
Obviously, a few years prior,
yes.
But they were also graduates. But yeah, those are the 7 guys.
That's pretty damn amazing.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yes, sir. Crazy.
It is.
We didn't talk about it back then. I mean, we knew Kurt's dad was a wrestler, whatever. Larry the Act.
Oh yeah.
Nobody paid a whole lot of attention to that. We're even Kurt and I played first year. We played college football against each other, and then he blew out a knee, and that ended his football career. And then that's when he got into wrestling. When he blew out his knee in college football.
Wow, that is amazing.
Same with Rude too. Rude played like 1 year college football, and Darsow tried it, I think, for a year. And next thing you know, they're all in wrestling, and I'm continuing my college career.
Wow. I did notice fairly recently WWE has started to put up some classic matches on their free stream, I guess, on the network. And there was a scaffold match where it was Ivan Koloff and the Russian Assassin against the Road Warriors, and I'm like, I bet Nikita probably just told him, I'm not going up there.
That would be 100% accurate. I said, you cannot pay me enough to climb up on that scaffold. No way, Jose. No, thank you. Give it to somebody else.
Wow. I some of the things they did back then, like the, what was it? The Tower of Doom, the 3 cages on top of each other, and a Great American Bash, and some of the different things. And
Dusty Rhodes, brother. Dusty Rhodes, the creative genius. Like, for real. The War Games, Best of 7 against Magnum TA.
Yes.
Dusty Rhodes, the creative genius, came up with all that stuff, man. The American Dream, baby. Power to 3 power, James, if you will. Yeah.
Well, it's been an honor and a privilege. I appreciate you making time for us today. We definitely will have to do this again because you are a wealth of knowledge on several areas. Before I let you go, talk to us about the ministry. How do people go about bringing you in and having you come to speak to their church or come sign autographs at a wrestling event? Or how do people bring you in, my friend?
Well, I appreciate it. The simplest website, you gave NikitaKoloff.com.
Yes.
There's also just Koloff.org, Koloff.org. Koloff.org. That one will take them to some simple, but they can still navigate some more of the website, but it's just simplified the web address. And then they can also email me through there. Also, Lex Luger and I now, for the guys out there, Lex Luger and I facilitate a camp in North Carolina called Man Camp. We do it typically in the spring, one in the spring, one in the fall, small groups of men, and centers around just him and I taking our years of combined experience in physical health and wellness and developing a championship mentality and our spiritual journeys. And we just spend a few days together as men and just pursue what it looks like to be healthy in all these areas of our life. And there's a specific website for that, just mancamp.info, I-N-F-O, mancamp.info, that they can get more information on that. But I do just a variety of things, as you mentioned. I'll preach on a Sunday morning at a church. We'll do men's breakfast, lunch, dinners, conferences, crusades, revivals, just a lot of different doors that the Lord has opened for me to go and speak, and autograph signings as well. I still do those. I'm scheduled to be in May, hopefully, in Lexington, Kentucky for one. Got a couple others scheduled. I think one in Greensboro in, I think, the end of June. And
of course you're going to be in Greensboro.
That's it. Of course. Come on. Starcade, the birthplace of Starcade.
That's right.
Yeah. So, and then they can follow, again, you already mentioned, but they can follow me on Instagram and Twitter, Nikita Koloff with the number 1 behind it, Facebook pages, and all of that. And, yeah, I'd love to come into the area, whether it's signing autographs or share the gospel and the good news. So I'd be honored to come your way. So I appreciate that. I appreciate the time today too, James.
Yes, it has definitely been a fun time, and I look forward to more. And as soon as all this COVID stuff's over with, I've got a few wrestling companies, as we've talked on email, who are very interested in bringing you to Kansas, and also a few churches that I know of that are interested in bringing you down here, and I'm hoping we can do like a combination thing, so hopefully we can pull that off. But
yeah, and that's a lot of times what I'll do. I mean, I'll do an autograph. I was going to do that up in Ohio in March. I was going to do an autograph signing on Saturday, and then preach on Sunday in a local church there, and unfortunately that got disrupted, but I appreciate I do that a lot of times, a lot of different combo things like that as well. And one other little quick note, I mentioned, the second edition of Ring of Redemption. I'm also working on a brand new book. I won't say a lot about that right now, but I'm excited to be I'll be hopefully by the end of the year I'll be announcing a brand new book that'll be coming out as well. So
fantastic. Well, Nikita,
yeah.
It's been an honor and a privilege, my friend, and I will talk to you soon. Have yourself a wonderful day, sir.
Thank you. Hey, everybody out there, stay safe, be wise, keep your health about you. Just know I'm one who's praying over our country, and hopefully we're going to turn the corner on this sooner than later. And just God bless you all, and thanks for being fans, and thanks for tuning in.
Definitely. Thank you, Nikita. God
Thanks,
bless,
James.
my friend. Have yourself
Bless
a wonderful
you.
day.
Thank you.
Thank you, my friend. There he goes, Nikita Koloff, here on our world famous